Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Entrepreneur Survival Guide. I can't believe we're here at episode 5 already. So today I thought I'd tell you the story about how once upon a time a customer made me cry, and on reflection how grateful I am for that moment and what it taught me. We'll come on into a second of how she actually made me cry in a minute. But let's have a think about why I'm so grateful. So as I reflect back, I'm grateful about the actual situation that happened and the outcome from that situation, because although I didn't realise it at the time, it taught me all about a thing called buyer personas or client profiles or buyer personality, whatever terminology you may or may not have come across in the past. In effect, it is simply a marketing language or sales language or jargon way of saying horses for courses. Different people like different things. And once we're aware of this, we can do a lot of stuff in marketing and sales to increase our marketing effectiveness and to increase our sales effectiveness. Now, I'm not broadcasting this episode on the grounds of I think I'm perfect at it. I don't think anybody is perfect at it, but I'm always looking to improve on it and do better at it, and we always do it at the beginning of any client project. So this lady that made me cry, which I smile about now and laugh about now, but at the time it was devastating, really, to be honest, if I think about it. I was working back at Jacobs Photographic, a shop that, like a lot of shops nowadays, is no longer on the high street, right? It was originally started off as a pharmaceutical shop and expanded into selling cameras and camcorders and that kind of stuff. And I'd got a job at Jacobs when I was about 16. Well, I was 16. It was my first ever full-time job, and I'd got it just after I'd left school. I was so pleased with it. Much to my mum's annoyance, she wasn't pleased with it in any shape or form. She wanted me to go to college and get further education, not something after my experience at high school that I particularly wanted to go on and do myself. So I decided to get a job, get some cash, and start saving and also start spending. I started spending on some amazing stuff, some brilliant camera equipment, some fantastic surround sound speakers at the time. Anyway, I digress. So I was working at Jacobs Photographic. It was a shop, it was just on the side, outside of Derby city centre really, in what is a place now, Wilko's on London Road. And it was a reasonably sized shop, and there was a door at the front. It was a whole glass front panel display at the front, where you had second-hand cameras on one side, then brand new cameras on another side, and you had camcorders on the far right-hand side. As you entered into the shop, there was a long walkway down with film developing chemicals on one side and paper for film photo developing. Something that to some people now will seem rather alien in a digital age. In the centre of in the actual shop, there was a column, again with loads of merchandise on it, things like camera bags and tripods was there as well. And then around the outside, in like an L shape, there was a glass counter, again with certain products in it. And at one end of the shop, at the far end of the shop, as you walked in through the door, it's straight ahead of you, there was a counter where you'd go and you would drop off your film for developing 35mm film. And people would come to Jacobs. Its unique selling point was that it did next day photo development and prints for just £1.99 for 6x4 inch. Very next day. It was the cheapest, it was good quality, and people loved it without a doubt. We had queues all the way up to the door at lunchtimes and things like that. On the other side was the hardware counter, where you'd sell camcorders, cameras, SLRs, lenses. The whole lot was there. When you first started at Jacobs, you would start on the film development counter, and if you showed the knowledge, the skill and the development and such like, then you could start to go and serve customers on the other side as well. And I'd probably been there now for about a year. I was particularly loving serving customers. It gave me a real great sense of reward and purpose, and I got to know some of the customers, their names, and we'd have great conversations, and it was fantastic. It was real hearty customer service, and I loved every minute of it. And I was starting to serve people over on the camcorder, the hardware side, selling cameras, particularly compact cameras, telephoto cameras, lenses, single lens reflexes, SLR cameras, and one of the things that I hadn't sold at that point was camcorders. They were a different kettle of fish. I knew an awful lot about actual cameras, and I didn't know an awful lot about camcorders, but I was starting to sell them, and they were really high ticket, expensive items at the time. You didn't sell many of them, but when you did, it was great. And one day I remember there was myself, Jamie, I think, Stuart and Martin. We were all stood at the top, just stood in front of where all the prints were actually stacked up, hundreds of packets of prints of film that had been developed and printed. And it was a reasonably quiet day, not many customers coming. I think it was a Saturday, but I can't be certain that. It was a while ago, it was about 1997, I'm going back, which is more years than I'd care to remember, if I'm honest. Time flies. And there was a couple that came in, and this couple walked in. They didn't walk into the top end of the store, they walked in at the bottom end and approached the counter, and they stood there and looked up at us at the top and waited, kind of anticipating who would come down and serve them. Now, we generally took it in turns to go and do hardware sales to help each of us hit our sales targets and increase our bonus in a fair way. It wasn't a massive bonus by any means. I think it was 0.25% bonus that we used to get. So it was tiny, really, to be honest, but it was a bonus nevertheless, and we played fair as much as possible. And so it was my turn to go and serve this couple. I can remember that they looked reasonably posh, if whatever posh means, that's what it looked like to me. It looked like a couple that was in the market for buying. We had time wasters. You could always tell a time waster a mile off, but this didn't look like a time waster. It looked like a very serious couple that wanted to buy a camcorder. So I walked up to these guys, and over the time, while I was doing hardware sales and while I was doing new to customer service, I started to develop a persona that on the outside I was really bubbly. Potentially some people might even see me as extroverted, but ultimately I'm quite introverted, and really that was just an outside shell. And on the inside I was nervous and anxious and always rather concerned about what people thought about me, and that was a weakness and a massive strength at the time. I don't know whether you can relate to this. That concern about what other people think about me caused me to put this, for want of a better way of putting it, an act on. But that act enabled me to provide great customer service. And over the time, that act became, rather than fake it till you make it, it became part of who I was, and I was very natural at doing great customer service, and I enjoyed it, and the internal anxiety started to dissolve and disappear as I did more and more sales, okay? I approached this couple and I asked, how can I help? Normal standard question. Probably not the best because it's semi-closed, I guess. I could have asked something like what? Anyway, I'll move on, forget that. We'll come on to questions in another podcast, right? Now, this woman didn't reply with, yeah, sure, you can help me, I'm looking for, or hi, nice, yeah, hi, I'm looking for a camcorder, or hi, or anything like that. She looked me up and down with eyes so piercing, with distaste, with disgust, with such vehement judgment. I immediately was on the back foot. She burst my confidence bubble. And I can remember my self-esteem just draining away like water down a plug hole. It went so rapidly. And while I was 17, I felt like an adult. There was still very much a young kid who was insecure, finding his way in the world. And this woman managed to take me back to that anxious, insecure, concerned about what people thought about me in an instant. She then started to talk. Now, you'll understand I'm paraphrasing here. I cannot remember that far back, right? But I remember what she kind of said. In essence, she said, no, you can't help me. And I was like, oh, I'm sure I can. I'm experienced and I know about camcorders and I know what how I can help you. What was it you was looking for? Words to that effect. And no, you can't help me. Man, it was one of those tones that just sends shivers down your spine, right? The headmistress belittling you, talking down to you. It's like being back at school and being picked on or being thrown out of the in crowd. Everything in the world just kind of, it was one of those times where it lasted probably for fractions of a second, but felt like life in slow motion and lasting forever. So I tried to convince this lady that I actually could help her for a bit, whilst feeling that my face go bright red, a mixture, a blend of emotions bubbling away inside me. I felt I was in the wrong. I felt that it was my fault that she was acting this way towards me at the time. And I could feel the hurt and the pain bubbling away and going up. And that, you know, when your eyes start to tear up and glare up, and I can remember that happening, but I knew I just couldn't cry in front of a customer. Man, you can't cry in front of a customer, can you really? Eventually I gave in, and she said, get me somebody that can help. Get me somebody that knows what they're talking about. And I knew what I was talking about, and you couldn't have, if there was a sentence that pierced through me more than that you could say to me that would hurt more than anything, is get me somebody that knows what they're talking about. Whilst I'm not normally the best at demonstrating I know it, and I'm getting better at saying that I know things, even in this day and age. So I turned, and as I looked up to the top of the shop, there were my teammates staring down, and you could see they'd kind of gone from this relaxed state of talking amongst themselves about whatever it might be. It wouldn't have been Netflix then. Maybe they were all actually watching the same TV channel for a change. There were only 5 about. They were looking down, and you could see that kind of look as, you know, the nosy neighbour kind of twitch. What's happening outside? What's going on? What's happening? What's he done? What's that said? Has he upset a customer? Anyway, I started walking up. As I started walking up, I could feel the tears starting to roll down. I was holding them back because my teammates were up in front of me, and you can't lose face in front of your teammates. And I kind of walked straight past them, and I walked through this little doorway that took you into a staff room at the back. And I can remember being so angry, so upset. And the manager, Martin, followed through and asked me what was up. Now, I've been really blessed. Certainly from talking to other people, I've been blessed with the managers that I've had the luck to work under and work with. Martin was the first ever manager, and he was a true inspiration. Great guy, taught me an awful lot, and he calmed me down a bit. You know, explained that it probably wasn't me, it was her. Not probably, but it wasn't me, it was her. And that he would go and serve her, and then we'd sort, you know, have a chat later. So he went out, and he left me to calm down and chill out and reflect. And I reflected quite quickly, and I wasn't consciously aware of my learnings at that time. I wasn't able to articulate to other people what I was learning, but I'd learned something very profound, that different people like different people, and we judge people on appearances, and we decide whether we connect with that person based on a lot of various things. We haven't got time to go in here, but you know it. When you walk up to somebody, you know almost instantly whether you're going to get on with them, whether you like them, and whether they're going to like you. Now, that's vital, because you can adapt. In a face-to-face customer service situation, you can adapt. You can quickly know the type of person you're talking to, and you can change your language, your body language, you can change your tonality, you can change how you approach the person, because they're there in front of you and you're getting instant feedback, right? And I learned that lesson, and from then onwards I started to adapt and change how I approach different people in different ways to increase my chances of selling and to increase my chances of being liked, because we all like to be liked, yeah? So that was vital. It wasn't just about sales, it's about being liked for me at that time. And I took that forward into my leadership and management style, And as I was trained on personality types and learnt more about personalities, I was able to articulate more and more what had happened at that moment in time. So why is that important to online marketing situations? Why is that important to your next marketing campaign? Well, I mentioned that you can know a buyer persona when it's there in front of you, and you can adapt when it's there in front of you. You can't do that before you launch a marketing campaign, right? And that's why whenever we launch a marketing campaign for a client, we go through a client profile creator. It's the same buyer persona, client profile. It's the same thing, just slightly different terminology. It's about understanding the demographics, the psychographics, the attributes, the values that these people possess. So, for example, that lady back in the shop, she was probably a traditionalist, from the traditionalist generation. So we could have grouped her by age, not as in how old she was, but what generation she came from. She probably came from a traditionalist generation, or the forgotten generation, where age is important to them. Age is a sign of authority. Age matters to them. And if you don't look old, then that means in their value system, that means you probably don't have the knowledge. Now, something I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I looked really young. I mean, at the age of 25, I still had to take a passport to get a blooming lottery ticket, for goodness sake. So at 17, I just looked such a kid. It was crazy. And I had mousy brown, blonde hair, but centre parting with curtains coming down the front. So I had a childish look, screaming at her. She didn't deliberately come in to be mean to me, but she was almost potentially offended that we'd sent the youngest person to serve her. Had we known about buyer personas back at Jacobs, we would have probably sent the more mature person to serve her. Not because ageist or anything like that, and some of you will be struggling to go, well, you should just send whoever, and their skills should be the judgment. People aren't like that, as we've mentioned. If we'd sent the right person straight away, it increases our chance of a quicker sale and increases our chance of a sale. If it was a bilingual that came in, they're skeptical of authority, right? So I'd probably done better with them, and we could have adapted the salesperson to the customer that come in if we truly understood buyer personas. And if you truly understand buyer personas, the power that it can give you in your marketing and your sales can be fantastic. So this is why I want you to have a think about your buyers and how can you group your buyers. When we take on a client, we always look at the primary groups of buyers, and we then look at what are their values, what are their attributes, what are their demographics. If it's a new business, we go for a best guess kind of scenario, and we look at their competitors and look at the data for them. If it's an existing business, we look at the Google Analytics that tells us age. We look at the Facebook Analytics. We look at the data that's being brought in from all the different kind of social media channels. We do customer surveys as well, and ask customers what they value and what they want. And then we can position the marketing and the sales message to resonate with those people. Right? I'm so passionate. So many people forget to do buyer personas in a marketing campaign. You need to do this stuff, right? It will help you do your marketing campaign. It will help you have a successful marketing campaign. If you're not doing it, you're appealing to one or two buyer personas. The buyer personas are identical to you, or you're trying to appeal to everybody. And you know what they say? You can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. So think about buyer personas. What are your primary buyer personas? You might have 2 to 3 groups. Don't go any more than that. Maybe by age, maybe by generation, maybe by their role in a company, maybe by their length of customer buying from you. There's lots of different things. But to help you with that, I've created a free guide and workbook, step-by-step workbook. I'll leave a link. Wherever you're watching this, you'll be able to easily find a link for you to get my free guide about Client Profile Creator. It's on the top of all my social media profiles at the moment because I really want people to get this. It's the secret step that a lot of us miss. I still forget to do it on some of my own marketing campaigns sometimes, but with clients, I'm always best practice with clients more than I am for myself. Weird that, strangely. And my coach talks to me about that all the time. But yes, so the moral of the story was that different strokes for different folks, as another manager once taught me. We can group customers by personality types. We can group people by their general age. We can group people by their attributes, by their values. And then we can position our message to them. Please follow the link, download the guide, see what impact it has on your next marketing campaign. Let me know, give me a shout out, and tell me how you get on using it. If you've got any questions about how to use it, then also drop me a line, drop me a message. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all on episode 6. Take care, goodbye.